The chandeliers inside the Beverly Hills Summit Hall glittered like frozen stars, casting shards of gold across the marble floor. It was supposed to be the most glamorous night of the season, an evening where powerful names mingled and fortunes changed hands with a handshake. But no one expected the scandal that would rip through the room like a sudden storm. Maddie. Stone stood just behind the velvet curtain, one hand gently cradling her 5-month pregnant belly, the other gripping the edge of the backstage console to steady her trembling legs. She wasn't here as a guest. She wasn't even here as the wife of the billionaire host. Graham Lancaster, her husband, had told her she would ruin the aesthetic of the night if she showed up on the red carpet. So he sent her backstage, like staff, reminding her to behave and stay out of sight. She thought it was cruelty at its worst. Until she heard the crowd roar. When the spotlight hit the stage, Graham strode across it with a smile polished enough to blind. A tailored midnight blue tuxedo hugged his athletic frame, and his hair was styled to perfection. He looked like a man who owned the world. But he wasn't alone. On his arm was a woman half his age tall, sleek, stunning in a silver gown that shimmered like liquid ice. Her fingers curled around his arm with the confidence of someone who believed she belonged there. The audience gasped. Cameras snapped. Reporters whispered. Maddie felt her throat burn, as if she had swallowed fire. Graham leaned into the microphone, voice smooth and magnetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight marks a new era in my life. A better era." The silver-gowned woman pressed closer, smiling for the flashbulbs. Maddie's pulse pounded in her ears. She had been told this event was strictly business, yet here he was, parading a mistress in front of investors, journalists, and the entire Beverly Hills elite. Her stomach twisted so hard she thought she might collapse. A stagehand brushed past her. "Are you okay?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the stage as Graham raised the woman's hand like a trophy. "She has changed my life," he declared. "And tonight, I intend to tell the world exactly how." Maddie's breath hitched. The audience leaned in, waiting for the dramatic announcement. Something inside her snapped the quiet part of her, the soft part, the obedient part. She straightened her back, wiped her tears, then walked toward the stairs leading to the stage. Every step echoed like a countdown. 5 steps, 4, 3. When the spotlight suddenly shifted and illuminated her swollen belly, the entire hall fell silent. Graham froze mid-speech, his smile dying on his lips. No one in that glittering room expected the pregnant wife he tried to hide to walk straight into the fire. And no one expected what she was about to do next. Before the world saw Maddie Stone step into the spotlight that unforgettable night, they only saw the version Graham Lancaster allowed them to see: quiet, polite, nearly invisible beside her powerful husband. But Maddie had once been someone entirely different. Someone vibrant, stubborn, full of light. Someone who believed deeply in the good of people, even when the world kept proving her wrong. Growing up in a small lakeside town in Minnesota, Maddie was the kind of girl who wrote stories in the margins of her school notebooks and spent weekends fixing old furniture in her father's workshop. Her parents, Daniel and Ruth Stone, owned a modest restoration studio, and Maddie inherited their passion for restoring what others had abandoned. She loved bringing forgotten things back to life: the chipped dresser, the cracked mirror frame, the scratched oak table. Maybe that's why she later spent years trying to restore her marriage too, long after others would have walked away. Her childhood had been warm, simple, and full of laughter until the plane crash that took her parents 3 years earlier. Losing them broke something inside her that never fully healed. She moved to Los Angeles afterward, trying to rebuild her life piece by piece, taking freelance work restoring event spaces for hotels, galleries, and boutiques. She lived humbly, but she was proud of every bit she achieved on her own. Then she met Graham. He was dazzling in a way that made everyone else in the room dim by comparison. Confident, charming, brilliant. A self-made billionaire who seemed to know exactly what he wanted every second of the day. When he walked into the boutique hotel where she was refurbishing an old ballroom, he studied her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. He asked questions about her work, her dreams, her family. He laughed at her jokes. He brought her coffee the next day, flowers the next week. And within months, he made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. But love can be dangerous when you're lonely. By the time they got married, Maddie was so caught up in the whirlwind that she didn't see the subtle shifts, the way he corrected her stories in public, the way he guided her choices, the way he decided what was best for her. Slowly, predictably, he dimmed her light. He convinced her she was fragile, emotional, naive. He urged her to stop working, saying he wanted to take care of her. At first, it felt like love. Later, it felt like a cage. When she became pregnant, she truly believed that this would change everything, that Graham would soften, would return to the man who once held her hand as if she were something precious. But instead, he grew colder. He was distant during doctor's appointments, impatient with her fatigue, dismissive of her fears. When she showed him the first ultrasound picture, he barely glanced at it before answering a business call. The loneliness of those months carved deep into her. Every kick from her baby was a reminder that she was no longer just protecting herself, she was protecting someone who needed her strength, even when she felt she had none left. And yet she stayed. Partly because she still hoped. Mostly because she didn't know where else to go. Graham had tightened his control over her finances, cutting her access and calling it budgeting. He insisted she didn't need friends. If she tried to speak up, he tilted his head with that disappointed smile that made her feel smaller than ever. But what Graham never understood, what he never even considered, was that Maddie Stone had survived more pain than he could imagine. She had rebuilt her life before, and she could do it again. Something inside her had been waiting quietly, patiently for the moment she would rise. And that moment was coming faster than Graham could ever predict. The Beverly Hills Summit Hall was the kind of place people only saw in magazines, the kind of place that smelled of old money, polished ambition, and secrets everyone pretended not to know. Towering marble pillars framed the grand entrance, and the soft glow of champagne-colored chandeliers bathed the room in a warm, almost dreamlike haze. Outside the tall windows, the Los Angeles skyline shimmered like a sheet of scattered diamonds. High above, the moon hovered like a watchful witness to everything about to unfold. For years, Maddie had only ever seen this world from the edges. Events like this were where Graham shined, a master of the spotlight, a king walking through halls filled with other kings. She used to watch him glide through crowds dressed in tuxedos and gowns worth more than her entire childhood home. Everyone admired him. Everyone wanted something from him. Even the way he carried his glass of aged whiskey seemed to say, "I control this room." He loved places like this because they fed his ego. Tonight's gala was one of the biggest of the season, hosted at a ballroom lined with gold-trimmed mirrors, velvet drapes, and hand-carved banisters. The air smelled faintly of Dior cologne and fresh white orchids. Waiters moved elegantly between tables, carrying trays of caviar, truffle canapés, and vintage champagne. Investors, movie producers, political donors, and luxury brand executives mingled like old friends. And somewhere in the center of it all, under a spotlight he demanded be positioned, just right, stood Graham Lancaster. The room itself was a stage crafted for people like him, people who believed their wealth gave them license to shape reality as they pleased. Even the smallest details had been chosen to impress. Gold-rimmed glasses, imported linens, a string quartet playing soft classical arrangements near the grand staircase. On a platform to the right sat a glass display case holding the ceremonial Innovation Award Graham would present later. It gleamed under focused lighting, like a jewel meant to be worshipped. This was his kingdom. But for Maddie, this place felt more like a maze with no exits. Backstage was far less glamorous. The carpet was worn from equipment carts, the lighting harsh and unflattering. Graffiti-like tape marks covered the floor, and the smell of dust and overheated cables lingered in the air. This was where Graham insisted she stay. "You'll only distract people," he'd said earlier, adjusting his cufflinks without even looking at her. "Just stay out of the way." 1. She had stood there pregnant, exhausted, dressed in a simple dove-gray maternity gown, feeling painfully small in a world that valued everything she wasn't. Yet the very same world was where her parents had dreamed she'd one day belong. She remembered her father showing her pictures of historic ballrooms, teaching her how to restore cracked moldings and polish antique wood until it shined like new. He used to say, "One day, Maddie, your work will be in rooms big enough to make people hold their breath." Maybe that's why being backstage tonight hurt so much. She should have been part of this world on her own terms, not hidden like a stain Graham didn't want anyone to notice. From her side of the curtain, she could hear the crowd's murmurs shift, the way a room does right before a storm hits. Graham's voice boomed confidently over the speakers, followed by a wave of applause. Then Maddie heard the unmistakable rustle of a woman's gown brushing against the microphone. A voice light, flirtatious, laughed beside him. Her heart tightened. Something was happening out there. Something she wasn't meant to see. And it was about to drag her onto that stage, whether she was ready or not. Graham Lancaster had always been the kind of man people noticed before he ever spoke. There was something about him, something polished, sharp, almost predatory, that made others lean in when he entered a room. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was the kind of billionaire who built his empire by making sure everyone else stayed 3 moves behind. People admired him the way they admired a wildfire. From a safe distance, aware it could burn everything in its path. He was born in Connecticut to a father who thought emotions were weaknesses, and a mother who married wealth but never found joy in it. Graham learned early that affection was a currency and that people gave it freely to those who appeared untouchable. He made straight A's, became captain of the fencing team, and earned early admission to Stanford. But behind every achievement was an obsession he nurtured in secret: control. He didn't want love. He wanted obedience. By the time he entered the tech world, he already understood the one philosophy that governed his life. People could be bought, shaped, or replaced, and he lived by it. Graham founded Lancaster Innovations in a cramped apartment, sleeping 3 hours a night and surviving on ambition. Within 7 years, he transformed it into one of the most aggressive AI firms in the country. Investors adored him. Competitors feared him. Employees worshipped or despised him, sometimes both. But those who truly knew him recognized the truth. Graham didn't want a partner. He wanted property, which is exactly what he tried to turn Maddie into. At first, he had admired her because she was soft, kind, untouched by greed. To him, that made her predictable, moldable. She wasn't like the women who chased wealth or loved the spotlight. She didn't demand attention. She didn't question him. She didn't challenge the decisions he made for her own good. She was the perfect accessory to his public image, the compassionate wife of a ruthless visionary. Except Maddie hadn't stayed predictable. She had started asking questions, requesting more independence, talking about going back to work. Graham hated that. He wanted to be the son she revolved around, not a man she simply shared a life with. When she became pregnant, he expected her to crumble into reliance. But something about the baby made her stronger. And strength was the one thing he refused to tolerate. That was when he found reasons to come home later and later. When he started receiving private calls he said she didn't need to worry about. When he began praising his new executive assistant, Harper, just a little too much. And later, a second assistant, Layla, who was barely 24 and hungry for status. Graham manipulated them the same way he manipulated everyone else, with promises, attention, and selective cruelty. The worst part wasn't the affairs. It was the satisfaction he took in knowing Maddie suspected but didn't confront him. That silence fed his ego. It confirmed his belief that she needed him, that she would tolerate anything rather than walk away from the life he provided. And tonight, at the gala, he planned the biggest humiliation yet. He wasn't just going to show off a mistress. He intended to publicly announce a new personal chapter, essentially declaring Maddie irrelevant in front of hundreds of powerful people. His goal wasn't divorce. It was dominance. He wanted the world to see him abandon her before she ever dared to abandon him. He rehearsed the speech for days, adjusting the tone, the smile, the timing. He had even coordinated lighting cues with the stage crew to highlight him and the woman beside him. But Graham's confidence blinded him. He didn't realize how much Maddie had changed. He didn't know she no longer feared him. And he had no idea what she had already discovered about him, things that could destroy everything he'd built. And he was about to realize he wasn't the only one who knew how to play dirty. The moment Graham stepped toward the center of the stage, the atmosphere inside the Beverly Hills Summit Hall shifted. The soft chatter faded, the chandeliers seemed to glow brighter, and every camera in the room tilted upward, as if obeying an unseen cue. This was his moment, one he had engineered down to the second. Even from backstage, Maddie could feel the tension rolling through the air like slow thunder. Her hand rested on her belly as she took a shallow breath, the baby's soft movements fluttering beneath her palm. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the stage. Graham had made that painfully clear. Instead, he had told her to stay useful and help the staff coordinate backstage logistics. As if she were an assistant. As if she weren't his wife. As if she weren't carrying his child. When Graham lifted the microphone, a practiced smile spread across his face. It was the smile he used in interviews, on magazine covers, at board meetings, a strategic blend of warmth and superiority, designed to charm anyone watching. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing through the grand hall, "tonight is more than a celebration. Tonight is a turning point not just for Lancaster Innovations, but for me personally." A ripple of curiosity moved through the audience. From behind the curtain, Maddie felt her stomach twist. She knew that tone. The way he elongated his pauses. The subtle tilt of his head. It wasn't the tone of a business announcement. It was the tone he used when he wanted to shock people, when he wanted attention to snap to him like a magnet. And then she heard it. The sound of a gown brushing fabric. A soft, flirtatious giggle. A woman's perfume sharp, floral drifting through the air. Harper, his assistant, the same woman Maddie had begun to fear, was more than an assistant. Harper stepped forward, arms sliding boldly through Graham's. Her dress was a shimmering silver piece that hugged her like poured mercury, reflecting the stage lights in dazzling flashes. Her confidence was nauseating. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't ashamed. She was glowing, basking in the stolen spotlight. All around the hall, whispered gasps rippled like a wave. Graham didn't flinch. In fact, he seemed pleased by the reaction. "This remarkable woman," he said, lifting Harper's hand, "has changed my world in ways I never imagined." Maddie froze, her vision blurred. Her breath caught in her throat. She gripped the curtain so hard her knuckles turned white. Every insecurity, every lonely night, every moment she had begged herself to believe Graham still cared, suddenly it felt stupid, childish, delusional. But Graham wasn't done. "In the months ahead," he continued, "I'll be making some personal transitions, necessary transitions, ones that will allow me to live more authentically." Reporters leaned in. Phones were raised. Flashbulbs burst like tiny explosions. Maddie could hear the blood rushing in her ears. She felt the baby move again slightly, as if startled by the sudden spike of tension in her body. Then Harper stepped closer to the microphone, lowering her lashes in a performance of innocence she didn't have. "We didn't plan to share this tonight," she said softly. "But Graham and I felt it was time to tell the truth." Truth. The word cracked something inside Maddie. She almost stumbled backward, her dizziness suddenly overwhelming. The room spun behind the curtain, and she grabbed the console to steady herself. Her heart was pounding so violently she wondered if anyone outside could hear it. The audience waited, entranced. Graham took a breath, the dramatic kind he used before headlines were born. And that was it. That was the moment Maddie stopped being afraid. She straightened, wiped her face, pressed a hand to her stomach as if gathering courage from the small life inside her. Then, she stepped toward the stage stairs. 3 steps. 2. 1. And when her foot lifted to the first step, the spotlight, almost as if it sensed her, shifted its glow, spilling directly onto her. Harper's smile dropped. Graham's jaw tightened. The room collectively inhaled. And Maddie Stone walked onto that stage, ready to destroy the script Graham thought he controlled. When Maddie stepped off the stage, the world did not feel triumphant. It did not feel brave or powerful. It felt loud and disorienting, like she had walked into a storm she wasn't prepared for. The crowd's murmurs chased after her like a swarm of angry bees, questions, gasps, flashes from cameras, the frantic shifting of bodies trying to understand what they had just witnessed. She reached the dimly lit corridor behind the ballroom, her lungs tight, her vision dotted with white sparks. Her hands were shaking so violently she pressed them against the cool wall just to keep herself upright. The baby shifted inside her, a slow roll beneath her ribs, as if sensing her panic. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had thought she would feel relief, or at least clarity. Instead, every breath scraped like broken glass through her chest. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the floor, her gown pooling around her like soft gray smoke. Tears, she had held back for months, finally pushed through, hot and humiliating. Her chest heaved as she tried to steady her breathing. But the hurt was too heavy. Images flashed through her mind. Graham ignoring her, laughing with Harper, lifting the young woman's hand as if she were a trophy. And the audience, the way they watched, stunned, fascinated, like witnessing a car crash in slow motion. The betrayal wasn't new. But tonight, it had teeth. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly as the ache inside her swelled. "Why wasn't I enough?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The empty hallway swallowed her question, offering no comfort. She felt small, stupid, and profoundly alone. Her phone vibrated in her clutch. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Unknown number. "Leave the building quietly. Do not return to the party." Her chest tightened. Was it a reporter? A threat? A warning? She didn't have the strength to decipher it. She dropped the phone and buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders quivered as she sobbed silently, the sound trapped behind her palms. Then her mind spiraled deeper. What if Graham tried to twist the narrative? What if he told the press she was unstable, emotional, irrational because of the pregnancy? He had done that before, subtly planting seeds in conversations, making her doubt her own perception of things. Her heart thudded painfully. What if he said she endangered the baby? What if he convinced everyone she was unfit? The fear wrapped around her like cold chains. She bent forward, forehead nearly touching her knees, fighting to breathe. Everything she had endured, the loneliness, the gaslighting, the isolation, crashed into her at once. She had been holding herself together for so long, pretending she wasn't breaking. Tonight the cracks finally split wide open. Footsteps echoed from the distant hallway. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Her hands slipped against the wall, and she nearly collapsed again. Her breathing grew rapid, shallow. She didn't want anyone to see her like this. Not Graham. Not Harper. Not the investors or guests whispering behind their champagne glasses. But the footsteps came closer. "Maddie?" She froze. That voice. Deep, calm, familiar. She turned her head slowly. Standing a few feet away, framed by the faint glow of an emergency exit sign, was Cameron Hale. His tailored suit was slightly undone at the collar, his expression sharp with concern instead of judgment. He stepped toward her, kneeling without hesitation. "What did he do to you?" Cameron asked softly, his voice steady but threaded with anger. Her throat tightened as she tried to speak, but only a strangled sound escaped. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her back, warm, grounding, nothing like Graham's cold, controlling touch. "You're shaking," he murmured. "You shouldn't be alone right now." She clutched the fabric of her gown, trying not to fall apart again. I can't breathe," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You will," Cameron said firmly. "I've got you." And when he helped her to her feet, supporting her weight with surprising gentleness, she realized something dangerous and undeniable. Someone had noticed her. Someone had cared. And someone else, someone very powerful, had just watched Cameron walk toward her. Cameron didn't lead Maddie far, just around the corner to a quiet service hallway where the noise of the gala dulled into a soft, distant hum. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a pale glow on the narrow walls. Maddie leaned back against the cool surface, trying to steady her breathing, while Cameron watched her with an intensity that was disarming in its sincerity. "Drink this," he said, handing her a small bottle of water he must have grabbed somewhere along the way. She took it with trembling fingers, sipping slowly until her heartbeat softened. When she finally lifted her eyes, Cameron's expression shifted, not pity, not concern alone, but something heavier, something that made her chest tighten. "You shouldn't have been backstage," he said quietly. She exhaled shakily. "Graham didn't want me seen." "No," Cameron replied, his jaw flexing. "He didn't want anyone to see the truth." His wording made her blink. "What truth?" He glanced down the hallway, as if checking for shadows. "Maddie, I didn't come here tonight for the gala. I came for you." Her breath hitched. "For me? Why?" "Because I found something," he said, lowering his voice. "Something you deserved to know a long time ago." Her fingers curled around the water bottle. "Cameron, you're scaring me." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, pulling out a slim leather folder, the kind used by lawyers, not hotel owners. He held it with care, like the contents were fragile. "I wasn't sure whether to show you this," he admitted. "But after what happened out there, I can't stay quiet." He opened the folder. Inside was a familiar emblem, one she hadn't seen since she was a child. A deep green crest embossed on ivory paper. Stone Heritage Trust. Her heart stuttered. This can't be, she whispered. It's real, Cameron said. And it belongs to you. Her vision blurred. She reached for the document, her fingertips tracing the crest as though touching a ghost. My parents, her voice cracked. They left you everything, Cameron said gently. You're the sole heir. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Graham handled the estate attorney. He said there was barely anything left after taxes and debts. He said the trust was dissolved years ago. Cameron's expression hardened. He lied, Maddie. He didn't just hide the truth, he had someone intercept the legal notices addressed to you. The trust is worth almost $2 billion. Your parents protected it in layers of legal insulation. Graham tried to gain access, but couldn't, not without your signature. So he kept the documents from you. Every single one. The hallway tilted. Maddie pressed a hand to her mouth, her breath catching as the betrayal twisted into something deeper. Not just infidelity, not just humiliation, but theft, manipulation. An entire life stolen quietly, systematically. He used me, she whispered. He married me for this. Cameron stepped closer, his voice steady. He married you because he thought he could control you. But the trust requires your consent for any access. He underestimated your parents, and he underestimated you. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't the weak, trembling tears she'd cried earlier. These were sharp, angry, clarifying. How long have you known? She asked. A month, Cameron admitted. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I needed confirmation. I met with the trust's board myself. They're ready to reinstate you officially. She felt her knees weaken, but not from fear this time. Cameron, why would you do this for me? His gaze softened. Because your father was my mentor. Because you deserve better. And because watching you suffer in silence has been its own kind of hell. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then footsteps echoed from the other end of the hallway, fast, sharp, furious. Cameron turned instantly, positioning himself in front of Maddie like a shield. Maddie, a raw voice shouted. Where the hell are you? Graham. His footsteps grew louder, closer, unhinged. And Maddie realized her nightmare wasn't over. It was about to escalate. Because Graham had heard just enough to know he was losing everything. The morning after the gala didn't greet Maddie with sunlight or warmth. Los Angeles was wrapped in a dull gray haze, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. She sat on the edge of the hotel's suite bed Cameron had arranged for her, one of his private penthouse rooms, quiet and safe, and stared at her reflection in the vast floor-to-ceiling windows. She barely recognized the woman looking back. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hair was tangled from the chaos of the night. But beneath the exhaustion there was something new. Something sharper. Something that refused to be broken. The truth about the trust had changed everything. Graham hadn't just betrayed her emotionally. He had tried to steal her entire inheritance, her parents' legacy, their life's work, every sacrifice they ever made. That knowledge simmered under her skin like fire. A fire that made her sit taller, breathe deeper, think clearly. She couldn't stay weak. Not anymore. Not with a child on the way. Not after learning the truth of who she really was. When Cameron knocked softly on the suite door, she didn't flinch. She stood, smoothing her robe, and opened it. He looked rested, perfectly put together in a crisp button-down and tailored slacks, even at 8 in the morning. But his eyes softened when he saw her. You slept? He asked. A little, she admitted. Enough, he nodded. Good. Because today, things start changing. They sat at the dining table near the window while Cameron laid out a plan, calm, steady, strategic. His voice held none of Graham's arrogance. No manipulation. No hidden meanings. Just facts and care. The board overseeing your parents' trust has expedited the process, he explained. By tonight, your status as the legal heir will be public record. Maddie's breath caught. Tonight? Yes, he said. And when it does, Graham will understand he has no leverage left. She swallowed, gripping her mug of tea. He won't let go easily. No, Cameron said. But you're not facing him alone. The certainty in his voice warmed something inside her, a place long starved of kindness. Later that afternoon, A team of stylists arrived at the suite. Maddie protested at first, but Cameron insisted. "This isn't vanity," he said. "This is armor." As they brushed out her hair, applied soft makeup, and fitted her into a sleek black maternity dress that hugged her curves elegantly, she saw that he was right. She was preparing for battle. For the first time in years, she saw strength return to her own posture. Her reflection didn't look fragile anymore. She looked like a woman stepping back into her rightful place. The final touch was a simple necklace, her mother's. Cameron had retrieved it from the trust's safety deposit box. Maddie's hand trembled as she clasped it around her neck. When she turned, Cameron's gaze lingered on her longer than before. "You look like yourself again," he murmured. Her chest tightened, unexpected emotion rising. "I haven't felt like myself in a long time." "Maybe," he said, "but the world is about to see who you truly are." They headed downstairs, crossing the polished marble floors of the hotel lobby. Guests turned their heads as she passed, some recognizing her from the viral clips of the gala, already spreading online. She didn't shrink from their stares this time. She walked with her shoulders back, chin lifted. Outside, a sleek black Mercedes awaited them. A driver opened the door. The world buzzed with energy traffic, horns, city noise. Normally, overwhelming. Today, empowering. As she settled into the seat, Cameron glanced at her. "Ready?" She nodded. "More than I've ever been." But just as the car pulled away from the curb, her phone buzzed with a new message, one that froze the breath in her lungs. A single text. From Graham. "You think you won last night? You have no idea what's coming." Won. And in that moment, Maddie realized the war had only just begun. By the time the car rolled up to the Hale Regency Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, Maddie felt the weight of Graham's text burning like a hot coal in her pocket. She didn't show it. She kept her posture firm, her breath steady. She had been broken too many times to let fear take root again. The truth was simple now. Graham no longer owned a single piece of her, not her silence, not her future, not her fear. Inside, the hotel lobby shimmered with polished stone floors, tall glass walls, and warm lighting that made the entire space glow like the inside of a jewelry box. Cameramen and reporters were already gathering, their voices buzzing with anticipation. The viral clips from the gala had ignited a wildfire online. News anchors were dissecting every second of the footage. Commentators were calling her the wife who walked into the fire. The world was waiting for her next move, and today, she was going to give them one they'd never forget. Cameron led her toward the grand ballroom where a press conference had been hastily arranged. Large banners displayed the Stone Heritage Trust emblem beside the Hale Hotel's insignia. Rows of chairs filled the room, along with production lights and camera rigs. The air crackled with expectation. "This is it," Cameron whispered, his hand lightly brushing her shoulder before stepping aside. As she walked onto the stage, the room erupted in flashes and murmurs. Maddie felt the weight of 100 eyes, but for the first time, she didn't shrink. She lifted her chin. The baby moved gently within her, as if reminding her of her reason to fight. A reporter called out, "Mrs. Lancaster, do you have a statement about your husband's announcement last night?" She didn't flinch at the title. Instead, she stepped up to the podium. "My name," she said clearly, "is Madeline Stone." When? The room went silent. She inhaled, then continued with a steadiness even she didn't expect. "Last night, my husband attempted to humiliate me publicly. But what the world didn't know is that Graham Lancaster has been lying not just to me, but to the public, to investors, and to people who trusted him." A ripple shot through the audience. Maddie revealed the documents from the trust. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward. She explained how Graham intercepted legal notices, how he intended to siphon her inheritance once she became dependent enough not to question him. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth, raw, unfiltered, devastating. Gasps echoed through the room. Her voice didn't shake once. "Today," she concluded, "the Stone Heritage Trust is being reinstated under my name. My parents' legacy will fund community restoration projects and support small heritage businesses across the state. And let me be very clear, Graham Lancaster will never control a cent of it." Thunderous applause broke out. Some stood. Some cheered. Her chest tightened with emotion. Relief, pride, vindication. But just as the room erupted around her, Someone pushed through the doors with the force of a man losing control of his world. Graham. His tie was crooked. His eyes were wild. His hair, once perfectly styled, was disheveled like he'd been tearing at it. Security tried to hold him back, but he forced his way forward. "Maddie," he shouted, voice cracking with rage. "You think this makes you powerful? You think you can embarrass me?" She didn't move, didn't blink. He climbed the stairs toward her, chest heaving, pointing a trembling finger. "You don't get to walk away," he snarled. "You belong." He never finished, because Cameron stepped between them, blocking Graham with a calm but lethal look. "She doesn't belong to you," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Gasps swept through the crowd again. Reporters surged closer. Security closed in. And right as Graham lunged forward, desperate, unhinged, ready to explode, a voice echoed from the back of the room that made the entire ballroom freeze. The voice from the back of the ballroom cut through the chaos like a blade. "Step away from her, Graham. Lay." The crowd parted instinctively as a woman in a navy suit strode forward, her heels clicking with the authority of someone used to commanding rooms filled with powerful men. Her presence radiated order and danger all at once. Dark hair pulled into a sleek twist, a badge clipped to her belt, and a folder tucked under her arm. Assistant District Attorney Rowan Pierce, the same prosecutor known for dismantling corporate crimes with surgical precision. Graham stiffened, his jaw clenched so hard the muscle ticked. "What the hell are you doing here?" Rowan reached the bottom of the stage, eyes sharp as steel. "You should be asking yourself that," she said, lifting the folder. "Because this is going to change everything for you." Maddie felt her breath catch. Cameron subtly shifted closer to her, ready to intervene if Graham tried anything else. Cameras zoomed in, microphones pushed forward. The room was no longer just watching, they were witnessing a man's empire crumble in real time. Rowan opened the folder with deliberate calm. "This morning, our office received an anonymous submission," she announced. "Documents detailing financial misconduct, offshore accounts, illegal data transfers, and attempts to access a private trust that did not belong to you." A roar of whispers rippled through the audience. Graham's eyes darted nervously. "This is insane," he barked. "She's lying. She's trying to—" Rowan cut him off. "We cross-checked everything. It was all yours, Graham. Every account, every signature, every transfer." Cameras clicked furiously. Maddie felt her knees weaken, but not from fear this time. From shock. She looked at Cameron, who simply gave her a nod. He hadn't sent the documents. Someone else had stepped in. Rowan's gaze pinned Graham like a predator cornering prey. "You didn't just betray your wife," she continued. "You committed fraud, and you violated state and federal trust laws." A murmur spread across the room like wildfire. Graham's composure finally shattered. "Maddie did this," he snapped, pointing at her with a shaking hand. "She's trying to ruin me." "No," Rowan said coldly. "You ruined yourself." Security finally stepped forward, blocking Graham's path. Reporters erupted with questions. Lights flashed like lightning. The walls of Graham's carefully curated life were collapsing around him faster than he could lie his way out. And then Rowan added, almost as an afterthought but loud enough for every microphone to catch, "There's also an active warrant for your arrest." The room exploded. Graham's face drained of color. "You can't. No, this is a mistake." But the officers were already climbing onto the stage. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over a camera cable. "You don't understand. I built everything. I made this city money. His voice cracked. His cufflinks clattered onto the floor as his hands were pulled behind his back. One of his most expensive possessions, glittering on the ballroom stage like the last shard of his broken ego. Maddie watched with a strange, quiet stillness. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was something deeper, a release of years of fear and suffocation. For the first time since she married him, she wasn't the one crumbling. Graham was. As he was escorted down the steps, he locked eyes with her, wild, furious, disbelieving. "This isn't over," he snarled through clenched teeth. "You think you've won? You haven't. You'll regret." Cameron stepped in front of her before Graham could finish. "No, Graham. The only one regretting anything tonight is you." Security shoved Graham toward the exit. The ballroom erupted into chaos, reporters shouting, guests whispering, cameras flashing relentlessly. But Maddie didn't hear any of it. Because in that moment, her phone vibrated. A new message. An unknown number again. But this time, the text wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Someone else is coming for you. You're not safe yet. And just like that, Maddie realized the fall of Graham Lancaster wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a much darker storm. By sunrise, Los Angeles felt like a different world. The city woke to a storm of headlines, all splashed with Graham Lancaster's disgraced face, his wrists locked in handcuffs. News anchors replayed the footage on loop, the confrontation, the attempted outburst, the moment his empire cracked open in front of every camera. Hashtags trended globally. Investors panicked. Commentators dissected every expression, every tremor in his voice. But inside Cameron's penthouse suite, things were quiet. Too quiet. Maddie stood at the window, wrapped in a soft ivory shawl, one hand resting instinctively on her belly. The early morning light washed the skyline in pale gold, but her reflection in the glass looked haunted. She had expected to feel free. She had expected relief. Instead, an uneasy heaviness lingered beneath her ribs. Cameron approached with 2 mugs of warm tea. "You should eat something," he said gently. "You barely had anything yesterday." "I'm not hungry." Her voice was flat. "You need strength," he reminded her. "For you and for the baby." She nodded but didn't reach for the mug. Her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. Everything happened so fast. Cameron stood beside her, close but not touching. "Fast, yes, but necessary." "I know," she whispered. "But the text, the warning. Someone else is coming for me. What if it wasn't Graham? What if—" "Maddie," Cameron interrupted softly, "you're safe here." But safety felt like an illusion, the kind she'd believed in once before. Her phone buzzed again. She tensed. Cameron held out a hand. "Let me see." "It's okay," she said, even though her palms grew damp. She checked the screen. A news alert. Lancaster Innovations stock down 27% as board suspends CEO. Cameron exhaled slowly. The board is moving fast. They have to. A company that size can't survive chaos. "He'll blame me," Maddie murmured. "He blamed you for everything," Cameron replied. "But now his power is gone." "One." She looked at him, really looked at him. His steady eyes, his calm strength, the way he stayed at her side without asking for anything in return. It grounded her. More than she wanted to admit. They spent the next few hours reviewing legal documents from the Stone Heritage attorneys, confirming her reinstated status. Maddie felt a strange mix of empowerment and heartbreak, reading the clauses her parents had placed to protect her. They'd known. They'd always known she might need shielding from the world. And she had just not the way they imagined. Around noon, Cameron's security team arrived, a group of stone-faced professionals he trusted with his life. They installed additional locks on the suite, swept for surveillance devices, and stationed guards near the elevators. Maddie tried not to feel overwhelmed, but the sight of heavily trained men patrolling the hallway made everything suddenly real. Someone wanted to hurt her. Someone other than Graham. "Cameron," she said quietly. "What if this is bigger than him?" He studied her, a shadow flickering behind his calm demeanor. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, memories flashing like broken glass. The night she overheard Graham on the phone. The coded language. The anger in his voice. Words she didn't understand at the time until now. "The financial misconduct," she said slowly. "The offshore accounts." He wasn't nervous about the trust. He was afraid of someone else. Someone he owed. Cameron tensed. "Are you saying he was involved with outside partners?" "I think he was in trouble," she whispered. "Real trouble." Before Cameron could respond, the penthouse landline phone rang. Not the cell phone, not the hotel extension. The private emergency line no one ever called. Cameron froze for half a second, then answered with a guarded tone. "Hale." A beat. Then his jaw tightened. "I understand. We'll be ready." "How?" He hung up slowly. Maddie's stomach tightened. "What happened?" Cameron looked at her with a seriousness she had never seen before. "That wasn't about Graham," he said. "It was about you." Her breath caught. "Me?" "Yes." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Someone just tried to access the trust records from a restricted federal server. Someone with resources. Someone who knows exactly who you are now. Her blood ran cold. Who? She whispered. Cameron shook his head. We don't know yet. But they're moving fast. A chill swept through her. Because now she understood. Graham wasn't the only danger. He was just the beginning. And whoever this new threat was, they were powerful enough to make Graham look small. For the rest of the afternoon, the tension inside the penthouse felt almost physical, thick, heavy, clinging to the air like fog. Maddie paced near the window, her heart knocking anxiously against her ribs. Cameron stood by the dining table, reviewing incoming reports from his private security network. Each new alert seemed to sharpen the crease between his brows. Someone tried to access the trust records. She repeated quietly. Why? Cameron lifted his gaze. Because whoever it is, they want control. And now that Graham can't get it, someone else is stepping into his place. She swallowed hard. You think it's business-related? I wish it were that simple, he replied. This kind of breach requires federal-level clearance. A chill ran down her spine. Her phone buzzed a news update. Graham Lancaster released on bail. Refuses to comment. She didn't know whether to feel relief or dread. Cameron stepped closer, gently taking the phone from her trembling hand. You're not facing this alone, he said softly. His reassurance was a warm anchor in a rising sea of fear. But fear didn't wait. At 5:14 p.m., the penthouse security system chimed a low, ominous tone. Cameron stiffened. Someone just bypassed the outer perimeter. Maddie's pulse spiked. What does that mean? It means they're close. He signaled to his head of security, a stone-faced man named Barrett. Within seconds, guards moved through the suite, checking every corner. Maddie stood still, clutching the back of the sofa, breath shallow. Cameron, Barrett called from the foyer. We found something. Maddie followed Cameron to the door. Barrett held an envelope thick, cream-colored, embossed with a gold crest Maddie didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted. Where was it? Cameron asked. Slid under the door, Barrett said. No fingerprints so far. Cameron opened the envelope cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, precise, chilling. The legacy belongs to the living. Hand it over. You have 48 hours. Maddie's breath hitched. She leaned closer, eyes narrowing at the bottom corner of the page where a symbol was stamped in deep crimson. A serpent coiled around a shield. Recognition jolted through her like electricity. I've seen this before, she whispered. Cameron looked at her sharply. Where? In my father's files. Years ago. He called it the Viper Crest. Her voice trembled. He said it belonged to a private syndicate, wealthy, ruthless. They bought failing companies and bled them dry. She paused. He warned me they approached him once, and he refused. Cameron murmured. She nodded. He said they don't accept no. They take what they want. The weight of those words settled in the room like a funeral bell. Barrett cursed under his breath. We're not dealing with a rival company. We're dealing with an organization. Cameron tightened his jaw. And if they went after her father? He paused, eyes hardening. They'll go after her. Maddie felt cold from the inside out. Cameron, what if Graham got involved with them? What if the offshore accounts were tied to the syndicate? He finished grimly. It makes sense. He was desperate for access to your trust. Maybe he promised them a cut. Her knees weakened. She reached for the wall to steady herself. So now they think I'm the problem, she whispered. They don't think, Cameron corrected gently. They know. Silence pressed down, broken only by the soft hum of the city outside. Maddie felt a sudden wave of protectiveness, fierce and primal. She placed a hand over her belly. They want my legacy. They want the trust. But they're not getting it. That's why we have to move, Cameron said. We're relocating the trust assets, sealing your identity behind stronger protections, and increasing security around you. She nodded, heart pounding but resolute. Whatever it takes. But before Cameron could respond, Barrett's earpiece crackled sharply. He stiffened, listening. Then his face drained of color. Sir, he said slowly, you need to see this. What is it? Cameron demanded. Barrett turned the tablet toward them. A live security feed. A figure standing in the underground garage, face hidden behind a mask, holding a phone, and speaking directly into the camera feed. Tick-tock, Madeline Stone. The figure lifted something into view, something small, familiar, unmistakable. A silver bracelet Graham had once given her, now stained with a single drop of blood. The image on the tablet froze Maddie in place. The masked figure stood beneath the dim garage lights, the silver bracelet dangling from gloved fingers. Her bracelet, a gift from Graham in the early months of their marriage, back when she still believed in the fairy tale. Now, seeing it tainted with a bead of blood made her stomach twist violently. Cameron took the tablet from Barrett, his expression darkening. "This isn't a warning," he said. "It's a message." Maddie swallowed hard. "Whose blood is that?" "We don't know yet," Barrett replied. "But the garage is supposed to be on complete lockdown. Whoever this is, they got past 3 different layers of access." Fear ricocheted through her, cold and sharp. "So they're already inside." Cameron turned toward her, voice firm. "We're evacuating you. Now." Everything moved at once. Barrett barked orders into his radio. Guards tightened the perimeter. Cameron grabbed Maddie's coat and wrapped it around her shoulders as if shielding her from more than just the cold. Her mind raced, heart hammering against her ribs. She pressed a hand protectively over her belly. "What if they hurt someone?" she whispered. "That blood, what if?" Cameron shook his head. "Don't go there. We'll get answers. But first, we get you to safety." They hurried down a private stairwell, flanked by security on all sides. The fluorescent lights flickered as they descended, each flicker making Maddie tense painfully. Every sound echoed too loudly. The hurried steps, the distant hum of machinery, the static bursts from Barrett's radio. When they reached the lower level, a black SUV waited with its engine running. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and cold metal. Cameron helped her into the back seat, then slid in beside her while Barrett took the front passenger seat. "Where are we going?" she asked, breath shaky. "A private property of mine in the mountains," Cameron said. "Secure, isolated, off-grid. No one can track you there." She nodded, clutching her coat. But her thoughts drifted to the masked figure, to the serpent crest, to her father's haunted warnings she never understood until now. As the SUV pulled out of the underground exit, Maddie couldn't help but glance back at the towering hotel. It felt like leaving behind the last piece of her old life. Everything familiar gone. Everything safe uncertain. 5 minutes into the drive, Barrett received an update through his earpiece. "Sir," he said, turning slightly, "the masked intruder is gone. Security still can't find how he got in. It's like he vanished." Cameron exhaled sharply, jaw tight. "Keep eyes on every feed. If anyone tries to follow us, anyone, you stop them." 1. The SUV merged onto a dim side street, winding away from the bright lights of downtown Los Angeles. Tall buildings faded behind them, replaced by sprawling residential blocks and long stretches of road lit only by occasional street lamps. Maddie leaned back, exhaustion pulling at her bones. She wanted to sleep, to forget, but adrenaline kept her wide awake. Her phone buzzed again. She flinched. Cameron reached out quickly. "Let me." But Maddie shook her head. "No. I need to know." "Ah." She forced her trembling hands to unlock the screen. A new message. "You should have left the trust where it belonged. No name, no number, no trace." Her breath caught. "They're watching us." Cameron's eyes darkened. "Not for long." Barrett glanced at the rearview mirror. "Sir. 2 cars behind us. Same distance for the last mile." Cameron straightened. "Are they following?" Barrett watched carefully. "If they turn when we turn, yes." Tension thickened the air. The SUV slowed slightly as they approached an intersection. Barrett took a right. Both cars behind them turned right too. Maddie's heart lurched. "Oh God." Cameron's jaw clenched. "Barrett, lose them. Now." The SUV accelerated. Tires gripped the pavement, engine growling as they wove through side streets. The pursuing cars sped up too, headlights bouncing across the rear window like predators' eyes. Barrett swore. "They're closing in." 1. Cameron placed a steadying hand over Maddie's trembling one. "Hold on." A sharp turn. A burst of speed. The city lights blurred outside as the SUV darted through a narrow industrial corridor, but the pursuing cars stayed locked in position. Then, a sudden slam. One of the cars jerked forward, nearly clipping their bumper. Maddie gasped, clutching her stomach as the SUV jolted. Barrett shouted, "Sir, they're trying to force us off the road." "Not happening," Cameron growled. He reached toward the driver. "Barrett, take the next bridge and prepare for evasive action." Maddie felt the SUV surge forward. Her pulse thudded painfully. Her breath came in shallow bursts. And just as they approached the dimly lit overpass, she heard a sound that froze her blood cold. A sharp metallic click. Someone was attaching something to the underside of their SUV. For one suspended second, the SUV seemed to float caught between motion and impact, while Maddie's world shrank into a single, terrifying realization. Something was attached to the underside of the car. A device, a tracker, or worse. The metallic click echoed inside her skull as she tightened her grip on the handle above her seat, breath frozen. Barrett jerked the steering wheel, voice sharp. "We need to shake them now. That wasn't just a bump, someone reached us. Drive." Cameron barked. "Don't slow down for anything." The SUV lunged forward. Maddie braced herself as they shot up the incline of the overpass, the city sprawling below like a glittering danger zone. The pursuing cars accelerated too, their engines roaring like predators closing in on wounded prey. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Each jolt made her clutch her belly protectively, instinct overriding fear. "What if it's an explosive?" she whispered, voice trembling. "What if they—" Cameron's hand covered hers quickly. "No. Listen to me. You're safe. I'm not letting anything happen to you or the baby." But even he couldn't hide the tension in his jaw. The SUV swerved hard as Barrett veered down a narrow exit ramp, tires screeching against the pavement. A sedan behind them fishtailed, but the second car stayed locked onto their tail. "They're trained," Barrett muttered. "This isn't random muscle." Cameron nodded grimly. "It's the syndicate." "Lar." Maddie's stomach clenched. "They're not going to stop." "No," Cameron said. "They won't." His voice softened for her alone. "But neither will we." The SUV sped into an industrial district, rows of abandoned warehouses, broken streetlights, and shadows stretching long across the cracked asphalt. Barrett took sharp turns, weaving through alleys and side streets, trying to break the pursuit. But the second car remained steady. Predictable. Professional. Like a hunter waiting for prey to tire. "Barrett," Cameron said sharply, "we need a defensive maneuver." Barrett didn't look back. "Already planned. Hold tight, everyone." He accelerated toward a long, empty stretch of road flanked by rusted chain-link fences. Wind whipped around them. Maddie's pulse kept time with the pounding engine. Barrett suddenly cut the wheel hard, sending the SUV skidding sideways in a controlled drift. The pursuing car overcorrected exactly as Barrett intended, leaving its underside briefly exposed. "Now," Cameron shouted. Barrett slammed the brakes. A hidden guard in the trunk compartment, a massive man named Cruz, kicked open the back hatch and fired a specialized EMP launcher straight at the ground beneath the tailing vehicle. A crackling electric pulse exploded in a flash of blue. The enemy car sputtered, lights dying instantly. It veered violently, skidding across the asphalt, before slamming into a pile of scrap metal with a thunderous crash. Maddie gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, they're alive," Barrett assured. "EMP doesn't kill engines, just stops them." But there was no relief because the first car, the one they thought had backed off, emerged from a side street ahead of them. And this time, it wasn't following. It was blocking. Barrett cursed under his breath. They predicted the maneuver. "Ho!" Cameron leaned forward. "Then we improvise." Barrett reversed sharply, spinning the SUV in a tight arc. The tires screamed. The car shot backward down the road fast enough to make Maddie's stomach dip. The masked driver of the syndicate's car stepped out slowly, as if he knew running wasn't an option. He held something in his hand, small, black, glinting under the streetlight. A control trigger. Her blood iced. "Cameron," she whispered. "The device. Under our car." "I see it," he said, voice low. "Barrett, go." Barrett floored the gas. The SUV surged backward, dodging the masked man by inches. As they passed him, the man lifted the trigger. A click echoed through the night. Nothing happened, but he smiled through the mask. "That was a test," Cameron muttered. "He wanted to see our reaction." Maddie felt her pulse stutter. So the real device is still active, Cameron finished. Barrett sped them out of the industrial zone, merging into the main highway. Trucks roared past, horns blaring. The city lights blurred around them. Maddie gripped Cameron's arm, breath shaking. Where do we go now? Cameron exhaled slowly. To the one man who might know how to remove what they attached. Who? She whispered. He looked at her, eyes heavy with the past. My brother. And Maddie realized then she wasn't the only one with secrets that could change everything. The SUV pushed north, speeding along the winding highway that cut through the foothills outside Los Angeles. The city glow faded behind them, swallowed by rising mountains and long stretches of darkness. Maddie held her breath with every bump in the road, every vibration in the frame. Terrified the hidden device beneath them would suddenly ignite. Cameron kept his hand over hers, thumb brushing gently across her knuckles, steadying her even as tension gnawed at his own posture. Barrett drove with the focus of a soldier, eyes locked on the rear view, engine humming with controlled urgency. After almost an hour, the roads narrowed. The darkness deepened. And then, far ahead, a lonely cabin emerged, tucked against a ridge, warm light flickering behind its windows. Smoke curled from the chimney into the cold night air. Maddie frowned. Your brother lives here? Yes, Cameron said quietly. By choice. What kind of man chooses isolation? She asked carefully. Cameron hesitated, then answered. A man who walked away from the world before it could destroy him. As the SUV rolled to a stop, the front door swung open, spilling golden light onto the porch. A tall figure stepped into view, not polished like Cameron, but rugged, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn flannel shirt and jeans. His beard was rough, his eyes sharp with a wild intelligence that made Maddie's skin prickle. Cameron, he called, voice deep and edged. You only come here when something's gone to hell. Cameron stepped out first. Good to see you too, Jacob. Jacob Hale crossed his arms. Who's chasing you this time? Not me, Cameron replied, motioning for Maddie to exit. Her. Jacob's gaze dropped to Maddie as she stepped into the wash of porch light. His eyes softened a fraction, not with pity, but with recognition. You're the stone girl, he said slowly. Daniel's daughter. Maddie blinked. You knew my father? Jacob nodded once. We worked together, years ago. Before all this. This hung heavy in the air. Cameron stepped between them slightly. Jacob, we need your help. Someone planted a device on the SUV. They're from the Viper Crest Syndicate. Jacob's expression darkened instantly. How close? Close enough to touch the undercarriage, Barrett said. Jacob motioned sharply. Pull the SUV into the garage. Barrett obeyed. Maddie followed Cameron inside the cabin, the heat from the fireplace thawing the cold that had seeped into her bones. The interior was surprisingly meticulous, maps pinned on corkboards, shelves lined with tools and equipment, stacks of old case files scattered across the coffee table. Why does he have all this? Maddie whispered. Cameron lowered his voice. Jacob wasn't always a recluse. Before he left the city, he used to work federal intelligence. Her eyes widened. Wait, you mean? Jacob re-entered the cabin with Barrett behind him, wiping grease from his hands. It's a pressure-triggered device, Jacob said. Armed when they tapped the undercarriage. Smart tech. Military grade. Not designed to explode immediately. Maddie's stomach dropped. So, what does it do? Jacob looked at her directly. It waits for the right moment. A drop in speed. A sharp turn. A stop. Anything. So driving here should have killed us. Barrett finished grimly. Maddie swallowed hard. Why didn't it? Jacob tossed a small, charred metal fragment onto the table. Because someone else disabled it before you even left the city. Cameron stiffened. Who? Jacob shook his head. Not someone trying to save you. Someone trying to make sure you got here alive. Maddie's voice trembled. Why would they want that? Jacob picked up a folder from the table, an old, worn file with her father's handwriting across the front. He handed it to her. Because, Jacob said quietly, your father wasn't just preserving a trust. He was hiding something much bigger, and the syndicate wants it back. Maddie felt her breath catch. What did my father hide? Jacob stepped closer, eyes hard. Not what, he said. Who? And before Maddie could ask another question, someone knocked on the cabin door, slow, deliberate, and impossibly calm. The knock wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was soft, too soft. A deliberate tap tap, tap, the kind of knock that didn't ask permission but signaled presence, a warning disguised as courtesy. Maddie froze where she stood, clutching the old file Jacob had handed her only seconds earlier. Her pulse thudded painfully in her throat. Cameron moved instinctively, stepping in front of her. Jacob raised a hand, signaling everyone to stay absolutely still. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. Too evenly spaced to be random. Too calm for a stranger. Jacob's voice dropped to a whisper. Nobody moves, nobody speaks. Barrett drew his weapon silently. Cruz, the guard who'd fired the EMP earlier, positioned himself behind the entryway wall. The fireplace crackled softly, the only sound in the tense silence gripping the room. Jacob Hale. A man's voice called through the door. Smooth. Confident. American accent with an edge of something foreign underneath. I know you're in there. Maddie's breath hitched. The voice was unfamiliar but more terrifying because of it. Whoever stood outside knew Jacob, and they weren't afraid of him. Jacob's eyes narrowed. How long has he been out there? He whispered. Barrett checked the peephole carefully. He wasn't here a minute ago. No car. No footprints in the snow. His voice tightened. He came on foot, or he was already here. Cameron muttered. He's a ghost. Open the door, the voice said, still disturbingly polite. I'm only here to talk. Jacob stiffened. Men like him don't talk. They take. Huh. Maddie's skin prickled with dread. She clutched her belly, instinctively shielding her unborn child, her fingers trembling over the fabric of her sweater. Jacob Hale, the voice repeated. I'll give you 10 seconds before I let myself in. Barrett's face hardened. He can breach the door. We have to relocate her. But as he spoke, the lights flickered overhead once, twice before settling to a dim, eerie glow. He's already inside the electrical grid. Jacob murmured. Cameron's hand found Maddie's again, grounding her even as fear clawed up her spine. Then the voice began to count. 1. Jacob motioned at Barrett. Prepare for breach. 2. Cruz shifted his stance. Muscles coiled like steel. 3. Maddie's heart hammered so fiercely she thought she might faint. 4. Cameron leaned in close and whispered near her ear. Stay behind me, no matter what. 5. Jacob reached for the emergency breaker hidden behind the bookshelf. 6. Leo. A shadow moved beneath the door. 7. The doorknob twitched. 8. Jacob mouthed. Get ready. 9. Cameron pulled Maddie back, shielding her with his whole body. 10. And then, silence. Not the silence of someone waiting. The silence of someone already inside. Jacob's eyes widened a fraction of a second before the entire left wall. Not the door shook violently. A section of the wooden wall popped loose, swinging open like a hidden panel. Cold air flooded into the cabin. Snow blew in. And a man stepped through the opening. Tall. Dressed entirely in black. A matte mask, covering his face, no features, no eyes visible. Only a faint shimmer where the visor curved. He moved with the deadly precision of someone trained to kill quietly. Cruz fired first. The masked intruder dodged with inhuman speed, twisting sideways so the bullet buried itself in the beam behind him. Before Cruz could fire again, the intruder flicked his wrist. Something small and metallic flew across the room, landing near Cruz's feet. A flash, bright, white, blinding. Cruz staggered back, cursing. Barrett lunged forward. The intruder spun, avoiding the strike with eerie fluidity. Maddie gasped as the masked man closed the distance with terrifying calm. Then he spoke, voice filtered but unmistakably the same one from outside. Madeline Stone, he said. You need to come with me. Cameron roared. You're not touching her. 1. He charged. But the intruder raised a hand not to strike, but to display something small between 2 fingers. A photo. Her father, standing beside the same masked man. Her blood ran cold. I kept my promise to Daniel Stone, the intruder said. And now it's time you learn the truth he died protecting. He took 1 step closer. And Maddie realized something horrifying. This man didn't come to kill her. He came to collect her. And he claimed her father wanted it this way. The cabin seemed to shrink around Maddie as the masked man held the photograph between two gloved fingers. Her father stood beside him alive, smiling faintly, his arm resting on the man's shoulder as if they were allies, or something deeper. The picture looked old, edges worn, colors faded, the kind of photo someone kept hidden for years. Maddie felt her lungs seize. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My father would never, he couldn't be involved with people like you." "One." The masked man tilted his head slightly, as if studying her reaction. "Daniel Stone protected you from the truth. He protected everyone. But that protection ends tonight." Cameron stepped in front of her, shielding her again. "You don't get to rewrite her father's memory." Jacob advanced too, posture tense. "Take off the mask," he growled. "If you want to talk, show your face." The intruder didn't flinch. "If I remove this mask, every camera, every drone, every syndicate eye within 100 miles will know where I am. And where she is." His voice shifted slightly, gentler. "You don't understand who's coming. I'm not your enemy." Cruz spat. Funny way of showing it. The intruder ignored him and looked directly at Maddie. Even through the mask, she felt the weight of his gaze. "Your father and I worked together long before you were born. He wasn't just a heritage restorer. He was part of a covert network protecting cultural assets from criminal syndicates, especially the Viper Crest. He saved thousands of artifacts and billions in hidden heritage funds. The trust was the cover." Maddie's heart pounded. "No. My father worked late nights repairing furniture and restoring buildings. He wasn't some secret agent." The masked man stepped closer. Cameron tensed, ready to strike. But the intruder raised both hands in a gesture of peace. "Daniel lived two lives, Maddie. The one you knew, and the one he hoped you'd never discover. But he knew someday his enemies would come for you, and they have." Her fingers trembled over the folder Jacob had given her. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you're the last person who can access the Stone Protocol." The air seemed to crack. Jacob swore under his breath. "You're kidding." Cameron shot him a look. "What protocol?" Jacob rubbed his forehead, pacing. "It was a rumor in every federal back office years ago. Daniel Stone created a backdoor system that could expose every hidden syndicate account worldwide. Billions in illegal assets. Names of high-ranking members. Everything. The Viper Crest has been hunting it since before Daniel died." Maddie's voice shook. "But I don't have anything. I didn't even know it existed." The masked man lowered the photo slowly. "You don't have it yet. But you hold the last key to unlock it." "Whore." A chill slid down her spine. "How?" "Your father encoded the final sequence into your inheritance into the trust itself. And only you can activate it." Cameron turned to her, eyes wide with realization. "Maddie, that's why they're after you. They don't just want your money. They want access to the protocol. And if they get it," Jacob added grimly, "every law enforcement agency in the country loses the only leverage they have against the syndicate." Maddie's knees weakened. She sat slowly, gripping the edge of the table. "So I'm not just a target because of the trust. I'm a target because of something my father hid inside it." The masked man nodded once. "Yes. And if the wrong people get to you first, they will force you to open it." Cameron leaned closer to her, voice firm. "They won't touch you, I swear it." But the intruder suddenly stiffened, head snapping toward the window. Jacob moved first, checking the perimeter cameras on his tablet. His face drained. "Damn it. They found us." The masked man turned sharply. "We don't have time." They breached the outer woods. Cameron grabbed Maddie's hand. "We're leaving. Now." But the masked man raised a hand. "No, there's only one safe place left for her." Maddie's breath caught. "Where?" He pointed directly at her, and then at her belly. "Inside the protocol vault where only your bloodline can enter." Before anyone could respond, the cabin windows shattered as dark figures surrounded the house from all sides. The sound of shattering glass tore through the cabin like a violent scream. Maddie ducked instinctively as splinters rained down, her hands shielding her belly. The night outside erupted into chaos, shadows crossing the snow, figures moving with precision, their footsteps muffled but unmistakably coordinated. Cameron lunged toward her, pulling her behind the heavy dining table just as another window burst inward. "Stay low," he shouted over the deafening tension. Jacob grabbed a rifle hidden beneath the floorboards and shouted orders with the clipped authority of a man who'd lived through ambushes before. "Cruz, take the right flank. Barrett, seal the back door. They breach the cabin line. We're done." The masked man, still anonymous, still unreadable, stood unnervingly calm at the center of the room. "They're not here to kill you," he said to Maddie through the chaos. "Not yet. They want leverage. They'll try to take you alive." "That's not reassuring," she whispered, trembling. "It wasn't meant to be." A flash grenade rolled through the broken window. Jacob dove, grabbing it and hurling it back outside just before it detonated, lighting up the forest with a burst of white fire. Cameron turned to the masked intruder. "You said the protocol vault is safe. Where is it?" "Underground," the intruder replied. "But you'll never reach it while they have you surrounded." "Then we fight our way out," Cameron growled. "You don't have the manpower." Maddie clung to the back of Cameron's shirt, her breath sharp and uneven. "How many are out there?" "At least a dozen," Jacob answered. "Probably more. They move like professionals, not hired thugs." "One." A bullet sliced through the wooden beam beside them, showering splinters. Maddie yelped. Cameron immediately cupped the back of her head, pulling her against his chest. Jacob ducked behind the sofa, firing clean, precise shots into the tree line. "They're testing our defenses, figuring out where we're weak." Barrett's voice crackled over the radio. "Back door compromised. They're circling." The masked man reached into a concealed pocket and pulled out something small, metallic, square. He tossed it to Cameron. "Emergency vault key. You'll need it." Cameron examined it, baffled. "This is a biometric lock override." "Yes," the intruder replied. "And only she can activate it." Another gunshot rattled the cabin. The masked man ducked behind a cabinet. "We have 90 seconds before they flood in." Maddie's breathing quickened. "I can't run. My legs." She winced as a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. Cameron's eyes widened. "Maddie? Hey, look at me. Are you okay?" She squeezed her eyes shut, swallowing hard. "The stress. The baby's kicking too hard." "Deep breaths," he urged. "I've got you." Jacob loaded another magazine. "We need to move her. Now." Cameron turned to the masked man. "If you know the way to the vault, lead us." But the masked man didn't move. "Not all of us make it there," he said quietly. "They'll follow your heat signatures through the trees. They'll track your footprints in the snow. Someone has to stay behind and divert them." Cruz scoffed. "We're not leaving you alone." "You don't have a choice," the masked man replied. "The protocol is the only thing that can end this. If they catch her, everything her father died for collapses." Maddie's hands trembled. "Why are you helping me?" The masked man hesitated for the first time since he appeared. "Because your father saved my life. And he made me promise to protect you if he couldn't." Her chest tightened. "Who are you?" A long silence. Then, someone who knew Daniel better than anyone. Before she could respond, Barrett burst into the room, bleeding from his shoulder. "They've breached the north side. We're out of time." Jacob pointed to the trapdoor beneath the rug. "Cameron, take her. Go." Cameron scooped Maddie into his arms. She clutched his shirt, breathing unevenly. "Don't let them take me," she whispered. "I won't," Cameron swore. "Not now. Not ever." "Len." Jacob wrenched open the trapdoor. A cold rush of air swept up from the darkness below. Snowflakes swirled through the broken windows. The masked man turned toward the door as booted footsteps pounded across the porch. "Go," he said. "What about you?" Maddie cried. He didn't answer. He simply raised his weapon. As the cabin door exploded inward and the first syndicate soldier charged through, the trapdoor slammed shut above them just as heavy boots thundered into the cabin. Maddie heard the shouts, the crash of furniture, the sharp pop of gunfire, but then the wooden door muffled everything, swallowing the sounds into a distant rumble. Cameron held her close as they descended the narrow metal ladder, Barrett following with one hand pressing his bleeding shoulder. The underground corridor smelled like cold stone and old earth. The walls were rough, carved decades earlier, maybe longer. Dim industrial lights buzzed overhead, flickering as though struggling to stay alive. The tunnel stretched into darkness, disappearing into a winding, uneven path. How far does this go? Maddie asked shakily, trying to steady her breath. "Half a mile," Cameron replied. "It leads to the vault entrance," Barrett added. "If the masked man can hold them off long enough." A pulse of fear shot through her. "He'll be killed." "He knew the risk," Barrett said. "And he chose it." "Major." But Maddie's chest tightened. There was something haunting about the way the masked man spoke of her father, something that made her afraid of the answer hiding in her unanswered questions. Cameron guided her forward, one hand gripping hers, the other steadying her elbow. "Stay with me. You're doing great." The tunnel sloped downward. Maddie winced as a cramp tightened across her abdomen. Cameron immediately stopped. "Maddie, talk to me. I'm okay, She breathed through it. "I'm scared." He touched her forehead gently with his. "I know, but you're not alone. I'm right here." Even in the choking fear, his voice anchored her. Then the tunnel shook, dust raining from the ceiling. Barrett swore. "That was an explosive." Cameron glanced back up the ladder hatch. "They're breaching the cabin." "Move." They pressed deeper into the tunnel. The lights flickered again, plunging them into half-darkness before humming back alive. Maddie clung to Cameron's arm as her heartbeat thundered. Another distant boom. Then another. Barrett stopped suddenly. Footsteps. Cameron froze. "Behind us?" Barrett nodded. "Multiple." Maddie's breath faltered. "They're in the tunnel." Cameron tightened his grip on her hand. "Run." They sprinted. Maddie struggled to keep pace, her pregnancy turning every step into a battle, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Their footsteps echoed wildly, ricocheting off the stone walls. The tunnel curved sharply, leading to a metal door sealed with an antique locking mechanism, ornate, intricate, almost ceremonial. Barrett reached it first, typing frantically on the small keypad. "It needs biometric activation." Cameron turned to Maddie. "This is you. Place your hand on the center plate." I don't know how." "Just touch it," he urged. She pressed her palm against the cold metal. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the door pulsed with a faint blue light. The lock cracked open with a groaning hum. But behind them the pounding of boots grew louder. Cameron pushed her through the widening door. "Go, Maddie. Barrett, with me." Barrett spun, gun raised. The tunnel lit up with muzzle flashes as dark figures emerged around the bend, weapons drawn. Cameron fired too, covering Maddie as she stumbled into the chamber beyond the door. The room was tall, circular, made of stone and steel like a hidden temple buried below the mountain. In the center stood a massive structure, a cylindrical vault made of reinforced alloy, its surface engraved with the Stone family crest. Her father's crest. Her throat tightened. This was the vault. Cameron slammed the door behind them, locking it with the override key. The pounding on the tunnel side was immediate, violent. "They'll break through eventually," Barrett said, breathing hard. "But not before we open the vault," Cameron replied. He turned toward Maddie. "It's yours," he said softly. "Only yours." Maddie stepped toward the vault, heart pounding, the weight of her father's secrets pressing against her ribs. Her fingertips hovered over the biometric panel. Then, a faint, metallic beep echoed from the console. "Unauthorized access detected," an automated voice announced. Cameron stiffened. "Unauthorized? No one else is." Another voice crackled through a hidden speaker in the chamber. A voice Maddie recognized instantly. Smooth, controlled, terrifying. "Graham." "Hello, Madeline," he said. "Did you really think you were the only one your father prepared?" And the vault lights flickered as a second biometric signature began overriding hers. For a heartbeat, Maddie couldn't breathe. Graham's voice shouldn't have been here, shouldn't have been anywhere near the vault. But there it was, crawling through the hidden speakers like poison. Cameron stepped instinctively in front of her. Barrett raised his weapon toward the vault door even though he knew bullets wouldn't matter. The room hummed with a rising mechanical vibration as two biometric signatures collided, hers and Graham's. "Impossible," Cameron muttered. "He shouldn't have access. He shouldn't even be alive after what he pulled." Maddie felt the blood drain from her face. "He must have copied my father's prints, or stolen something from the trust archives." Graham's cold laugh filled the chamber. "You always underestimated me, Madeline. You thought a little humiliation and a pair of handcuffs would finish me. No, I still know your father's secrets better than you ever will." Cut the connection. Jacob's voice suddenly shouted through the tunnel door radio. He must still have been fighting outside. "Maddie, listen to me. Override the secondary biometric feed." "How?" she cried. "Use your father's passphrase. He designed it for you." Her heart slammed against her ribs. A passphrase? Something he said to her? Something etched into childhood? Cameron placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maddie, think. What did your father always say when he tucked you in? When he taught you to restore things?" Something he repeated over and over. Maddie closed her eyes. The vault lights flickered violently, the system struggling to decipher loyalties. Graham's voice pressed again, smug and venomous. "You were never meant to hold this power, Maddie. You were the weak one." A memory surfaced, her father's warm voice, the smell of wood shavings in his workshop, the way he'd guide her small hands over worn furniture. "Everything broken," he told her once, "can shine again." Her eyes snapped open. "That's it." She placed her hand firmly on the panel. "Everything broken can shine again." The vault paused. Then a soft chime sounded. Primary user recognized. Secondary override denied. That. A furious scream tore through the speaker. Graham, realizing he'd been locked out. "You don't understand what you're doing. You'll destroy." The system cut his voice. Then the lights surged bright. The vault door hissed open. Inside was not gold, or money, or jewels. It was a sleek interface, cold steel, encrypted consoles, and thousands of digital keys suspended in holographic patterns. The Stone Protocol, a database capable of exposing the Viper Crest syndicate worldwide. Barat exhaled. "Your father built this? My God." Cameron touched her shoulder gently. "It's yours now." But Maddie wasn't focused on the technology. She was focused on a single sealed envelope resting on a pedestal. Her name written in her father's handwriting. Hands trembling, she opened it. A letter. "My Maddie, if this reaches you, it means I failed to protect you myself. But you must remember this. You were never weak. Your heart was never your flaw. It was your strength. And one day, the world will see what I always knew. You were meant to finish what I could not." She pressed the letter to her chest, tears sliding down her cheeks. Cameron cupped her face gently. "Your father would be proud." Before she could speak, a thunderous crash echoed through the tunnel. The last of the syndicate soldiers trying to break through. Jacob's strained voice crackled through the radio, shouting, "Maddie, activate the protocol now." "Now." With one steady breath, she placed her hand on the activation pad. The system asked, "Deploy global leak?" She whispered, "Yes." The vault roared to life, sending encrypted packets across every satellite, every major news outlet, every intelligence server. Names, accounts, locations. Everything the syndicate hid exposed to the world. The pounding on the door abruptly stopped. Then footsteps retreated. Fear dissolved into stunned quiet. "It's over." Barrett breathed. Cameron pulled Maddie into his arms, holding her as if he'd never let go again. She felt safe, not hidden, not controlled, but cherished. 3 months later, Maddie stood at a quiet ceremony honoring her father's legacy. The world had changed. The syndicate collapsed. Graham faced enough charges to keep him locked away for life. And Cameron, standing beside her, his hand wrapped warmly around hers, asked softly, "Ready to build something new? With me?" She looked at him, heart full. "Everything broken," Maddie whispered, smiling, "can shine again." And this time, she finally believed it. "All right. Let's talk from the heart, just you and me. Like we've been walking together through this entire journey." So the story has come to an end, my dear friends. And if you're still here, right now, still listening, still feeling something in your chest, it means this story didn't just entertain you. It touched something inside you. Maybe a memory. Maybe a wound. Maybe a quiet part of you that needed to be reminded of your own strength. Maddie's journey shows us a truth many of us forget. Life can break you, betray you, corner you, but as Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The things that hurt us the most often become the exact things that shape us into who we're meant to be. Her courage reminds us that healing doesn't happen when life gets easier, it happens when we get stronger. And like the Stoics believed, we can't control what others do to us, but we can control how we rise afterward. So if this story moved you, even just a little, let's keep walking this path together. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs strength today, and don't forget to subscribe because there are so many more stories waiting to find you, stories that might heal you in ways you don't expect. And remember, everything broken can shine again, including you.